Product placement. I want to talk a little bit today about the mind and where it comes from. And we're going to use this handy-dandy little high-tech visual aid. Now, our minds or our brains evolved in a certain context, and that was a context in which we were more or less continuously struggling for survival for millions of years, if you believe in evolution. If you don't believe in evolution, I don't know what to tell you. But this brain that generates what we call our mind is an incredible survival organ that gave us this huge evolutionary advantage over other animals. That we had this brain that generated language, that generated a way to talk about things that weren't there yet, that could be there, that might be there, that would be there under certain circumstances. And although we were relatively wimpy as far as our physique compared to, saber-toothed tigers, even though we were pretty vulnerable to attack by, say, an enemy tribesperson with a sharp object like a spear, we had this brain mind that we could use to survive. And it evolved that way through natural selection pressures. So the best survival brains were the ones that passed on their genes to their children, and those passed on their genes to their children. And so what we get is the product of millions of years of evolutionary pressure and selection that ensures that this brain that we have here is a superb survival machine. And so the mind, the language mind, the mind that talks in our head, is primarily concerned with survival. But now here's the thing. Who among you has been chased recently by a saber-toothed tiger? Show of hands. Saber-toothed tiger? Yeah? No? Who among you has recently been hunted down by an enemy tribesperson? Not so much? What about starvation? People watching this video, how many people watching this video have faced starvation? I don't want to make any presumptions here, but I'm guessing not many, although I don't want to make too many presumptions. So, freezing cold, have you ever come close to dying by cold? These are not generally things we face in our current life. What we do face frequently is the possibility of humiliation, the possibility of being judged, the possibility of being fired, the possibility of being ostracized. These are all symbolic threats. They're not the same kind of threats as having a spear plunged into our bodies, or being dismembered by a saber-toothed tiger, or starving to death. I think that's fairly evident. And yet, why then are we so terrified by humiliation? Why is public speaking such a common fear? Why do some people say that, many people say that they would rather be ill, they would maybe even rather die than go in front of a large group of people and talk or be forced to do so? We face symbolic threats because of this little guy. And, our actual brain is just a little bit bigger, and the mind is a function of the brain. But we're going to talk loosely about the mind-brain and its properties. And what I want to tell you a little bit more about is what that has to do with what we talked about last time of living according to values, or maybe we put that over here. We're going to use another handy-dandy high-tech illustrative prop. Let's call this values, this cup brimming with good things. And then let's call this the mind. So we're gonna distinguish between a life driven by survival needs and a life driven by what we think is really important and what we think is really good. Cheers. How do I turn this thing off?